Got it turned on now. Good morning. Good to see everyone. Well, is it safe to say that we had a little spring this weekend? Little change in weather. That was awesome. That was really wonderful. I was out of town this weekend, and twice a year I will visit with my friend Steve. My friend Steve lives in northern Wisconsin, and I live here, so we meet somewhat in the middle in different places. This year we decided to meet in the Chicago area. So I was in Chicago this weekend hanging out with my friend Steve, and we always have a great time. We talk about tons of different things, stuff that we're interested in, reading, thinking about, and we also play golf as by tradition, and it's very competitive. So we have fun with that. But the first thing we do when we meet, we always meet at a golf course, and we meet in the parking lot of the golf course. And those meetings are very important in a humorous way for the whole weekend. Most of this is, our relationship is very lighthearted. We laugh together a lot. We find many things funny and humorous. So the arrival, there's kind of a tradition and a order of operations of events that we do when we meet each other in the parking lot. And the way that we greet each other, the things we say, is all in the name of humor. So we'll call each other by the wrong name, we'll quote old movies that we both enjoy, and a bunch of other stuff, most of which is too embarrassing and probably not funny to anyone else except myself and Steve, so I'm not going to talk about it. But the arrival is important. We haven't seen each other for 6 months or a year sometimes, and when we see each other and we greet each other, it's full of symbols and metaphors and traditions that our friendship has created over time. And those are very important moments that we know have meaning and significance to us, mostly because they're really funny and hilarious to us. The things we say, the way we shake hands, the things we comment about in our environment, that sort of thing. Now, that's significant. The way that we are communicating is through traditions and symbols, metaphors, and we have a goal in mind to make each other laugh, okay? And usually we do. The arrival that we're talking about today is the arrival of Jesus into Jerusalem days before he goes to the cross. And that arrival, too, is a way of communicating with people around, and it's full as well with symbols, with metaphor, with tradition. And the very things that Jesus is doing, the things that are happening in the crowd, those all mean something. They're not just random comments. They have depth. They have significance. They have meaning. And so in our text today in Luke chapter 19, we see Jesus, as we read today, entering into the city. And the first symbol that we come across, and we're all familiar with, is the symbol of a donkey. Now, on Wednesday night, Tabitha, my wife, and I, we teach the kids class, and we had a drawing contest to see who could, first of all, draw the strongest, most awesome, powerful horse. And most of them drew a horse on 2 legs, flexing the muscles like this. It was funny. And then the second contest was who can draw the lowliest, wimpiest, meekest donkey. And the imaginations were great. The creativity was awesome. So there were a lot of ties. Everyone was given credit for their creativity. But we talked about in that class, asking the question, why would Jesus choose this wimpy, lowly, meek donkey? Why is he riding in on that when he's making the greatest announcement ever, that he is king, that he is Messiah? This hasn't been spoken publicly a lot or at all by Jesus, but this is the day. He spent his whole ministry trying to keep that quiet a little bit, but now we're making the announcement. Now this is the day that Jesus is going to say, I am the king. I'm the Messiah of Israel, of my people. He wants everyone to know. How do you make that announcement? How does a king announce himself? Well, not typically the way that Jesus announces. He chooses this symbol, cultural symbol of humility, of meekness. That's the first thing that's going on in this donkey. There's also a tradition, not unfamiliar to the people standing around, of great Israelite leaders, most famously Solomon, riding into town on a donkey. So this is not the first time a king has ridden into town being announced as the Messiah, as the king. That same thing happened to King Solomon when he was inaugurated. And so Jesus is tying in with that tradition of an Israelite king and some other great leaders as well, tying in with the symbol of humility, and also making a contrast politically and theologically between the guys who ride in on the war horses, most notably Pilate, who came in from the other side of town through the other gate on his war horse to enter into town that weekend for the festival with pomp and circumstance and fanfare on his war horse, looking strong and awesome. And on the other side of the city comes Jesus, and he could have done the same thing to make the same impression, but he doesn't. He wants to make the point to say, I am a different kind of king. And there's a different kind of power by which I operate. It's not the powers of the world. It's not the war horses of the world. It's a power rooted in humility. That's what my kingdom is about, Jesus says. And all those messages are there, and there's probably more besides. But this arrival, like I said, is filled with symbols and metaphors and traditions that give meaning to the event. But what do we find when we look at the text? What do we find today as the Spirit works on our hearts, as we come to the text with open minds, longing to be transformed this final Sunday before Easter, as we conclude our Lent series? What do we find? The first thing that sticks out to me is that we find faith in this text. One of the things we ask the kids on Wednesday night is, if someone came to your house, a stranger that you don't know, and started, undoing the lock to your bicycle, and then started to walk away with your bicycle, what would you do? I'm not going to give all the answers that were presented. Some of them were a little violent, I got to say. But most people would stop them and say, hey, what are you doing? Right? Just like what happens in this text. Jesus sends the disciples to take a colt that doesn't belong to them, tied, they're loosening it, and the owners are like, what's going on? Now, we asked the kids in the class, if someone was taking your bike out of your own driveway, and you said, what are you doing? And they say, the Lord has need of it. The Lord needs it. What would you do? Most of the kids said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to believe that. I'm just going to, take my bike back. It's hard to trust that situation, isn't it? Imagine if someone was taking something from you and they said, the Lord needs this. The Lord has need of it. What kind of faith does it take to say, man, I totally trust what's happening here. I don't know, I don't understand, but I'm going to trust that that's true and that the Lord will have need of it. Now, how is the Lord going to help? They don't know. Is this donkey needed to transport some water to a thirsty person? What's it going to be used for? I don't know. It turns out the Lord literally used the donkey. It was the Lord who said because of their faith, they were rewarded richly by knowing that Jesus himself sat on this donkey to ride into Jerusalem to announce his kingship because of their faith. The faith of the crowds as well, recognizing Jesus, laying their coats on the ground for him, for the donkey to walk on, a sign of honor, of praise to Jesus. So one of the things that we find in this text, which is a great encouragement, is that there is faith. That faith, no matter how difficult, giving up something that is meaningful to you, giving way to the will of God even when you don't understand it, recognizing Jesus, praising him in this way, we see faith on display. And we also see the Pharisees, don't we? The shouting of the crowds in verse 38 of Luke 19. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. That word peace is important. We'll come back to it. Now, you got everyone shouting, dancing, laying their coats down, super excited, exhilarated. The King is here. It's awesome. But the Pharisees didn't see it that way. The Pharisees in the crowd, verse 39, some of them said to him, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. Tell them that they're in the wrong. Tell them to stop doing this. Tell them to stop celebrating. Tell them to stop singing. Tell them to pick up their coats. Tell them to go home. They're missing out on something. They're telling people to tone it down. We talked about this text in our worship planning meeting on Wednesday, and there were some good insights to this as well. I think it was David Tucker talked about the story of David when he was dancing in the street, not wearing very much clothes, and his wife was totally embarrassed by him. Totally embarrassed by the way that the king, David, quote unquote, undignified himself, humiliated himself in front of everyone. And she called him out on it. She rebuked him, just like the Pharisees wanted to rebuke, that wanted Jesus to rebuke his disciples. And David said to her, essentially, what I'm doing right now is for the Lord. It's not for you. And if you think that was bad, I will become even more undignified before the Lord, before all these people, because I'm pouring out my heart to him. I don't care what people think about it. I don't care if people are uncomfortable about it. I'm trying to praise the Lord. That's what these people are doing. The Pharisees, yes, they have political concerns, right? This looks like a political demonstration. This could be interpreted as anti-Rome, anti-Caesar sort of political demonstration. That's right. But it's also, as David Tucker pointed out on Wednesday, it's also about comfort. It's also about dignity. It's also about praise. The idea that we're asked to tone it down is not something unique to this story. We might have that impulse ourselves sometimes. I come from a tradition that is very reserved. Growing up in churches, we didn't do a lot of open praise with our body, to use our body to praise God. It was very reserved, and it was a lot of just sitting with reverence and using our voices solely. Not a lot of David, not a lot of the disciples in that form of praise. And my tradition could be a bit uncomfortable with other forms or expressions of praise or thanksgiving. Uncomfortable being in the presence of it, uncomfortable certainly doing it ourselves. So there's an important question here in the text about that applies to me. I still struggle with being comfortable just freely letting praise flow from me and using my body and expression in a free way, right? I still like those constraints on me. I still like to be reserved. It doesn't come naturally to me to just have freedom of expression when I'm talking about God, when I'm praising God, when I'm singing, when I'm praying. It's difficult. It's a struggle. And I want to be in that place of freedom. And maybe you've experienced those struggles as well. Maybe you see some people that are free in their expression and you wish you could be free yourself to do that. This is one of the things that Jesus addresses here. He says, let them cry out. Let them express themselves in this way. What is happening is a good thing. The coats and the praises and the prayers and the singing and all of that, Jesus tells you, this moment in history is important. What's happening here today, he says in verse 40, Jesus says, I tell you, if these become silent, if the people are quiet, then the stones will cry out. Do you understand what's happening today? He says, the Messiah is here and being announced as king. This is a cosmic event. This is a big deal in the history of creation. Creation is going to cry out today in celebration of this announcement. And if it's not the humans doing it, then the rocks are going to do it. But something is going to do it because this is a big deal. This is a big moment, a big day. And God's creation is going to collect its praises and send them up to the heavens in this moment. So you can try to silence it over here, but the praises are going to come up over here instead, out of the rocks. But he's saying this is a good thing. What's happening here is good. Let them be free to praise. It's my prayer that I will be free to praise, and you as well. So we see faith in the text. We see the Pharisees in the text. We also see the people of Jerusalem finally. What happens in verse 41, not part of the text we read this morning. When he finally got to Jerusalem, he saw the city, and Jesus wept over it. He said, if you had known in this day, even you, the things which make for peace, but now they have been hidden from your eyes. What is the song being sung back in verse 38, quoting the Psalm 118? Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. This song is about peace. These disciples recognize Jesus means to bring peace. And peace is the very thing that this city, Jerusalem in general, is missing out on. They're missing out on the fact that God is in their presence. Missing out on the fact that Jesus, their king, their long-awaited king, is right there on a donkey. Missing out on the very thing that they long for. Peace. Peace. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And in 7 days, God builds to this climactic day 7, where he rests. And that rest is the great symbol of the shalom of God, the peace of God, that he means to permeate all of creation. The goal was peace, shalom. What does that word mean? It's not just, peace is not just a house where two brothers aren't punching each other and fighting in the backyard or in the living room, right? It's not just everything's calm and quiet. It's not just absence of war. Peace is so much more than that. Peace, the peace of God is about wholeness. It's about relationship. It's about everything is the way that it's supposed to be in the world. It means wholeness. It means well-being. It means health. full health. Every single aspect of the human experience, human existence, health. It means rightness. Everything is right the way it should be. This is what God achieves on the seventh day. And he rests in that peace, in that shalom. This is the thing that Jesus means to restore to humanity. And he's riding into Jerusalem to give it to them that day. The thing that all of us want, the thing that we long for, that's built into our hearts, this peace that we long for. And Jesus is there to give it, but the whole city misses it. He says, and he weeps because of this. He weeps because he knows this is what humans are made for. This peace, harmony in relationships between one another, relationship between humans and God, harmony in the relationship between humans and creation. But he weeps in verse 41. And in verse 42 he says, if you had known this day the things which make for peace, but now it's been hidden from your eyes. Failure to recognize the peace. And I'll tell you why I think one of the reasons why they didn't recognize it is because it came on a donkey instead of a war horse. Hard to recognize or acknowledge or be excited about or get behind a kingdom rooted in that kind of power that comes in humility. This chapter in Luke 19 starts out with a story of Jesus and Zacchaeus. Remember Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector, and Jesus comes into town, into Jericho this time, on the way to Jerusalem. He's in Jericho, and Zacchaeus is in the tree, and he's a tax collector. He wants to see Jesus, and so the story goes, Jesus calls him down out of the tree, and he says, Zacchaeus, I'm going to go to your house today to eat at your house around your table. I want to know you, and I want you to know me in this table fellowship. Well, that's a way. I was reading a book a while back, and this guy was pointing out there's more than one way to take Jericho. More than one way to conquer Jericho. And he was comparing and contrasting, asking, when's the last time we heard about Jericho or a major story about Jericho? And of course, the one that always comes to our mind is the conquest of Canaan. And that story about the Jericho and the Hebrew armies and the marching around the walls and blowing the trumpets, and the walls fall down, and then they capture the city by the sword, right? And he says, that's one way to take a city, by power, by the sword. Jesus enters Jericho with the same motive that he enters Jerusalem. He wants to take this city. But the way he goes about it is completely different. He looks Zacchaeus in the eyes, and he says, Zacchaeus, you come down from there. I want to go to your house. I want to sit around the table with you. And that moment is what changed the heart of Zacchaeus. The relational humility of Jesus changed the heart of Zacchaeus. And that's the beginning of changing the city, taking Jerusalem or Jericho. Jesus is trying to do the same thing in Jerusalem. You can go in there on the war horse and take it by the sword, but that doesn't really change hearts much. What is Jesus' strategy? What is his kingdom based on? It's based on humility. The very stuff that we've heard more than once today from Philippians 2. Read that text, spend time in that text, dwell in that text. It's Jesus on display. It's calling us to be exactly who Jesus is. And when he rides into Jerusalem, he means to bring the peace of God. But he does it in a humble way. And that's why some people miss it. It's not impressive. It's not proud. There's no fanfare of demonstrating worldly power. It's a celebration of humility. A celebration of humility. And Jesus weeps because the people missed that opportunity. As we conclude today, I want to ask some questions together as individuals and as a congregation, as a church. As we spend the next week leading up to Easter, I want to ask, are we recognizing Jesus in our midst? Are we truly recognizing the power and the presence and the work of Jesus in our lives, in our congregation, what's happening in this church? I think it was Mary Shallert that mentioned on Wednesday in our worship planning meeting. Sometimes we expect God to just do these huge, gigantic things that are obvious and big, and everyone can see it, and it blows us away, and it's awesome, and tons of fanfare. But she says sometimes we miss out on the fact that God is in the ordinary, that God is present and active and at work in our lives, in our congregation, in small, ordinary ways. Am I missing out on seeing those because I'm expecting something else? When I pray for God to work, when I pray to see God at work, am I expecting something big? Or do I need to change those so that I have eyes to see God at work in the ordinary, in the humble, in the small, in the donkey? And secondly, I want to ask, are we missing out on the peace of God? This is a big one. Is it possible that Jesus has arrived and means to bring peace to me in my life? Peace, wholeness, health, righteousness to this congregation. Is it possible that we can miss out on that? That we fail to have eyes to see what Jesus is trying to bring us? Is it possible that he could weep to some extent over it because we missed the boat? Those are questions that I want to ponder this week. We spent a lot of time talking about being led by the Spirit. We've talked about that over the last 6 months or so. And man, I praise God for all of the humble, Spirit-led discipleship that has been happening here. It's so encouraging and so awesome. I know that we haven't missed all of it, but I want to have a posture of humility that says we haven't arrived yet, that there's more that God wants to do here, and I don't want us to miss it. I don't want us to miss it. So are we recognizing Jesus in our midst, and are we missing out on parts of the peace of God that he means to give us? Let's ponder those questions this week. A couple of announcements here. Our Wednesday Bible class, we've concluded the Chosen series for now. And between now and the Campfire Devos that we'll be doing in the summer, there's a 6 or 8 week period that we're going to still meet together on Wednesday. But it's going to be sort of a small group discussion based on probably the text and that we preached on the Sunday prior. So if you come this Wednesday, we'll be talking about this text in Luke 19. We'll be talking about, are we recognizing Jesus in our midst? We'll be talking about, are we missing out on some of the peace of God? Those sorts of things, okay? It's a congregational discussion. These are times to be humble and honest and vulnerable and open to the Spirit's work in our conversations and we'll do that for several weeks until we go out to the campfires outside. And we'll talk more about format this Wednesday when we're there. Secondly, I want to remind everyone, last chance on a Sunday, that we can sign up for the day of prayer. And for those who are not aware, this coming Saturday, the day before Easter, our congregation is going to be engaged in a day of prayer. So we have, the goal is for us to be in prayer as a congregation for a whole day before Easter Sunday. And the goal is for all of us to have spent the day in prayer, and that when we arrive together on Sunday morning and gather around this table here, we look into the eyes of everyone around this table, knowing that we've been in prayer for one another, for our congregation, for our future, for what God is leading us to do, for eyes to see and ears to hear, and certainly for much more that's going on in the world that we need to be in prayer about, but with a special focus for our congregation. There are still a few time slots left. They're in 30-minute chunks. So if you sign up your name, you're signing up for 30 minutes. And if everyone signs up for a 30-minute block, or you can sign up for 2 of those or whatever, we'll have the whole day covered. The whole day, someone in our church will be in prayer, and we'll be in constant prayer for our congregation. Yes, I know what you're going to do. Go for it. Yeah, please, you do it. Okay. And I'd also like to invite the Spanish-speaking congregation to join us in that if you'd like to. And you can share on this sign-up sheet, which is on the blue bulletin board in the hallway there. There are some sign-up spots left. Or if you want, you can choose a spot that already has someone else's name there. Okay? So you don't have to choose a blank spot. You put your name in a time slot where someone else's name already is, and so our congregation and yours will be joined in that hour, and we can be praying together during those hours as well. So I want to invite you to join us in that. Please, that would be awesome, and to be able to gather on Sunday morning on Easter, knowing that we've all prayed for each other. Anything else you'd like to add? Okay. So that's taken care of. It's really excited for next Sunday, Easter, coming out of that day of prayer and being able to celebrate the resurrection of the Lord together. It's going to be really great, and looking forward to Wednesday night too. So with that, I would like to ask Scott to come up and lead us in our final song. Let's stay.